In this video, we will be starting in the new game series. We'll be building this game, Don't Eat the Yellow Snow, and we will be using the Lua language and the Love2D library. If you want to follow along with this series, just go to github.com, programming rainbow, and it'll be called Yellow Snow Lua Love2D. That is the name of the repository we'll be using. So the first thing we'll need to do, if you've watched my prior videos, I've already set up a terminal before. I've already set up how to use Lua with NeoVim, specifically NVChad. So this video, we're just going to make sure that Love is installed. So I'm on Arch Linux, so for me, it's just Love that I need to install. And I'll use the needed switch. And it's just Love that I need to install. I already have it installed, but this is what the command will look like. Okay, and we also need to pull the repository because it's got all the different episodes that I will be filming for this. It's got all of them already completed, but it also has the sound files. Let me just show it real quick. It's got all the different videos, the code for each of the videos that I've already set up. It's got the font that we're going to use. It's got images, it's got music and sound. So you will need all of these for this project. The code we'll actually be making, but if you want to see the code from any of them, I've already set it up ahead of time. Okay, so I'm just going to grab this URL up here and I'll do a git clone on that. Let me make sure I'm in the top level directory. So I'm going to cd inside this, and it'll be Yellow Snow Lua Love2D. And I'm just going to start up NeoVim. So this is broken up into the videos. So basically video 1, if we look into video 1, it's going to be the code that we're going to end up with at the end of this video. So this is what we're going to end up with at the end of this video. And then in video 2, and so on and so forth. What's in the very top level directory is actually the same code that's in the video 5 folder. So this is the final project. So we're just going to take a look at what the final game will look like real quick. And then we will start building it up and explaining what's going on. So I'm just going to open up a, whoops, not what I want to do. I want to be on this side. Open up a lower terminal, or you can open up a floating terminal, however you want to open up your terminal. It needs to be in the directory that we're working in, which is the Yellow Snow Lua Love2D. And to launch this, since I'm inside the directory where the code is at, where this config.lua and the main.lua file is, since I'm in this, I'll just do an ls on it and we can see these files in here. I can just type in love and then dot. The dot means this directory. I'm running it from this directory. And I'm just going to mute the sound. So this is the game running. This is what the final game is going to look like. It's just a very simple game. And when you hit the yellow snow, the game ends. Okay, so I'm going to close that. That's what the game looks like. So now we're going to back up and we're going to build this thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually remove all these files that are over here on the left, all these Lua files. Those are the ones that we're using right now for the game that you just saw. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those. So I'm just going to use a rm, and I'll just say all Lua files. That should be just fine. So those are gone. And let's just look at the website. So this is the repository that I'm working with, and it just has some basic how to run it. It's not too much information here, but we're using the Love2D. So if you go to love2d.org, you will find the website, and right inside this wiki, the green button here at the top right, the leftmost button on the top right, that's the wiki page, and that takes you into here. And this has got all kinds of good information. So I'm specifically already clicked on the config file. Let's just go to, so this would be the normal, and I'm in the config files right here, because that's the first file we're going to make. So if we just have, I believe, just a basic config file or a basic main file, it'll actually just open up an empty window. So let's just do that first. I can do this down here, but I'm just going to close this terminal. If you're using NeoVim, and you're in the bottom, this terminal, you can press Control X and then space X or leader X to close it. And over here, if I just want to make a new file, I can just press A and give it a name. So I'm going to say main.lua. I go over here and I just say love dot. That is enough to actually open up a window. So all you need to actually open up a window is just a blank main.lua file. And if you run love in that directory, that file, it'll just open up a, by default, a 800 by 600 window. And the only way I can close it is by using the actual close command. So that's pretty cool. Even though we haven't done anything, if I open up this file, there's nothing in this file. Over here, we can add a couple things. Now, this isn't this config file is going to be called conf.lua. This is not main.lua. This is another one. And this is where we can set the width and the height. Now, by default, I believe it's 800 by 600 every time, but I'm just going to set it to that just for myself. And we can do some other stuff. We can actually give it a title. So we can set a title right here. And we can give it a title. And we could give it an icon. If you're in a floating window manager that uses icons in like the corner of the title bar or something like that, we can set an icon as well. And the icon is right here. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to create this right here. So I'm just going to copy this. Now, we made the main.lua, but we're actually going to be working in conf.lua because this is just configuration for it. So there's two files that you would have if you have the most basic setup, which would be a main.lua where you put your code, and conf.lua where you could put things like the width, the height, the title, stuff that's loaded beforehand. So I'm going to make another file using pressing A on the left panel there and just call it conf.lua. Okay, so now we have the two windows opened up here, and I'm just going to paste in by pressing P what I copied there. Now, I actually don't want it to be 1024 by 768, but we'll just leave that for a moment. I'm just going to save it and run it, and we'll see what it looks like. See, it's a little bit bigger now. So we could put something in here like, say 1600. And I'll go down here and I'll run it again, and you'll see that it's wide. See, it's wide. So we are changing the size that we're running here. Okay, but I want for this game, I'm going to want it to be 800 by 600. So I'm just going to put those numbers in here. The other one was the T window, and I believe it was title. We can look back on the page again. It was down here. T window title and T window icon. Those are the two I want. And both of these are going to take a string. The first one, you can see that it's a string right here, but the second one where it says nil, this is actually a string to the actual image file that we want to use. So I'm just going to put that in. It's the same as the one above it, T window dot, and this will be title. And we're not going to see it on my system because I'm using Exponent. It's a floating Windows manager. But just trust me, it's there on your system. You will see it. If you're using something like Windows or GNOME or KDE or OS X or something like that, that shows a title bar, then you'll see the title. Or however OS X shows it kind of in the top. Oh, we will see it. Sorry. Yeah, I will be able to show the title on this. So for the title, I'm going to put don't eat the yellow snow, and we'll put a exclamation mark there. And then for the icon, I'm going to load an image, and I'll show you what the image is. So the image that I'm going to use, we'll look over here in images folder. I have a background image, which is a 800 by 600 image. I have a player image, which is the snowman. And then I have a white snowflake and a yellow snowflake. So I'm going to use the yellow one because it's called Don't Eat the Yellow Snow, and white is doesn't show up as much. The yellow one kind of, the color will show up more obviously. So I'm going to use the yellow one. I'm going to use not the full path, but the relative path. So since this file that I'm actually typing in right now is this file right here, this image directory, images directory, is this at the same level of this file. So I'm going to type in images and then yellow.png. So that's a relative path. And yellow.png. Now, for my system, since I don't have something that's shown an icon, we won't see this icon, but I can spell it wrong to make sure it's working correctly. For this title, I can show it. So let's save that real quick. I'm going to shrink this down, and what it's going to do is it's going to show up just right up here where it says Yellow Snow Lua Love2D. It's going to show up right here. Okay, do you see up here when I hover my mouse there, it says Donate the Yellow Snow? That's the title. So some people, it might show up right up here above if the title's here, or if you have OS X or different Linux systems, it might show up here. It's not really matter where it shows up. It's just wherever your title is showing up, that's where it's going to be. The icon is the same thing. Let's misspell this file just to see that it should probably crash if it's misspelled. Okay, so there we go. This file that I'm trying to load, because I spelled it wrong, I just spelled it PN instead of PNG. It doesn't exist. So that's what a crash would look like. But I already knew ahead of time that I was spelling it wrong, so I know exactly what I'm looking for. But you can read it down here. It says couldn't open file, images, yellow.pn doesn't exist. So that's pretty simple. We'll just fix it. So this is everything that I'm going to be putting into this file. That's pretty much all I'm going to do. You can do other things with it, and you can read down that document here. Other stuff can be in here as well. But for this project, that is going to be 100% of that file. We are not going to edit this file again during this whole series. So you can read through this. It's in the wiki. It's config files. But we're done with that file. So we can close that. Now this file is where basically this is just going to be the entry point. So I'm not actually going to really put any code here, but I'm just going to put the code in here that is going to hand it off to other things. So if you watched my prior video on Lua and Love2D, I put everything in one long file that was the main.lua file. I didn't separate that into different modules. But in this game, we are going to separate it out into different modules. We will also be using singleton objects and a couple classes. So what I'm going to do with the main.lua is this is just going to be controlling, handing off to game. There's going to be a game.lua. So let's just look at what the website has for this. So I'm going to close this config page right here because we're not using it anymore. So this one right here is just the, if you just click love right here on the left-hand side, it loads this. This is just an example program that's filling a thing. So I'm just going to grab this. I'm just going to grab it and throw it straight into the, it's kind of got our basic structure. It's loading something, it's updating something, it's drawing something. And that's what we want to have in the main.lua. So this is their little example thing. It's just going to draw a rectangle that keeps expanding down the screen. So we'll just see exactly what it looks like, and then we'll modify it. So I'm not even going to worry about all this stuff that is complaining about, because again, this is not what our code's going to look like. So I just want to run their example code. Basically, whoever wrote their example code has made some mistakes here, but it should still work. And there we go. There's our rectangle expanding down. A couple things I want to show here is, if you haven't watched the prior video, basically I'm using NVChad, which is a pre-configured version of NeoVim. And for Lua, I'm using Lua LS, which is the Lua language server. And for formatting, I'm using Style Lua. And for linting, I'm not using Lua LS, I'm using Lua Check. So those are the three that I'm using. But if you're using like VS Code, you may be using Lua LS and Style Lua or something like that. So you're going to have a similar kind of, it's complaining. It's saying non-standard global variables. So these things should be local. This should be local. DT is not even being used. We could just get rid of that. That's optional. Oh, these need to be global. Yeah. I don't like the whole way this is set up, but I guess it's just for the purposes of showing off a demo, it's fine. But yeah, I'm not going to be using this. So basically I'm going to delete all this stuff. But I'm keeping the structure. So I do want this function, the function love.load, love.update, and love.draw. I do want this kind of setup right here. So I'm just going to keep all this. So that was kind of the basic setup. There, though, we will add a couple other things, but this is kind of the setup that I want, and I want it to hand it off to other things. So I basically want love.load to actually call game load that we're going to create, and I want update to call update. I want it basically. This is where love hooks in, where you hook into the love's internal system that does its updating, does its drawing, does its loading. But I want that out into another module that will be not a class, it'll just be a singleton object, but it'll be called game. So what would that look like? We're going to make another file. I'm just going to save this real quick. Basically, these are here, these functions are here, but they're not doing anything. So I'm going to make a new file, and I'm going to call it game.lua. This will be a module. And it's kind of like, it's not a class because I'm not making any instances of this. I'm going to use it directly. So this is going to be an object that has data in it and it has methods on it, but it'll be just a table, a standard Lua table. I'm going to do it in the main first, and then I'll pull it out and put it into the game so it makes more sense. The one thing I want to do is I want to be able to load an image, the background image, then I want to draw the background image. So if we go back to the website, and we go to graphics. Now this is just where I'm getting this page that I already have loaded. It's over here on the left-hand side. If we go down to love and then graphics right here, this is the page that I've opened up. And what I'm looking for is how to load a new image. So down here on object creation, there is new image right here. And if I open this one, it's this page that I already have open. And I'm looking for this right here. This is going to be the variable that's holding the image. This is the love method that is loading the image. And here's the file name and settings. All we really need is the file name. So that's what I'm going to do. If we just make an image, and I'm going to put it into a table called game, because remember very early on with all the last code that was there from the example right here, this is using globals. And it was complaining about those, but if I set them to locals, then the other functions will not understand them either. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a table and put all my information inside the table. So I want to grab this function over here, graphics one. This right here is what I'm looking for. So I'm just going to copy that. So since I'm doing the code initially in this main, just to show what it looks like before I separate it out into another module, I'm going to make a table here, and I'm going to call it game. I'm going to give it a capital G, not because I want it to be global, but because I want it to be, I'm kind of following when I make classes or objects, I'm going to give them a capital. So really when I'm doing the prototype class style, I'm going to give it a capital letter. But I'm still going to use the keyword local because I don't want it to be, I'm not going to make anything that's global. But this is a singleton, it's not actually a class. It's just an object that's going to be used directly. So we have a local game table, and it's got the capital G. Just for me, I'm kind of treating it like it's a class, even though it's not actually a class. So now that we load the image, we can put it inside of there. So I'm going to go into load here, and I'm going to put the image inside of here. So it's going to be game. And we'll call this background image. And I don't know if I want to be, I'm going to use snake case. So that function that we copied, I'm just going to paste it in. And the image name is the background. So the image name is background image, but it's actually going to be put inside this table up here. We need a file name, and I also want to remove this. So the background image is in images right here in the images directory, just like what we did before, and it's just called background PNG. So let's do that. It's just saying that we're doing something to it or we're mutating it, but we're never actually using it. That's fine. We are going to use it because now that we have an image that we're loading, I want to be able to draw that image. So let's go back to the website. And in images, where we were here, we got how to get a new image, but up here above here is how do we draw an image. So love.graphics.draw. And I've already opened that up over here. And it's pretty simple. You can put lots of options into it. I don't need to put any of these options in. My image is already an 800 by 600 image. So I'm just going to grab this function right here. And this drawable part is the name of the image object, which is called background for us. I'm going to copy this. I'm going into the draw function now. If you haven't watched my previous videos on Lua and Love2D, basically Love is going to take anything in here and it's going to load it. Anything in here, it's going to check it and update this code, and it's going to try to do it 60 times a second. And then down here, anything that's in here, it's going to try to draw it. So these functions get called automatically by Love. This one gets called once. These two get called over and over again. I believe it's 60 times a second. Here, we want to now draw this image. So I'm going to paste this in, and I don't need any options for this, but I do need to actually have the image that I need to pass in the image, which is going to be game.background image. Okay, so game.background image. There we go. So now this should actually load the image and display it. So let's give that a go. Now I haven't put anything into game yet because after I'm done with this, I'm going to start moving it over to that other file. But the other file is just blank right now. It's not doing anything, and it's not even going to be loaded by Love right now. It's because we're not even requiring it. So this file will not even be seen right now by Love because there's no reason for Love to look at this file. So, but it does look at conf.lua and main.lua automatically. So that is the background image that I was hoping to get. And it looks like it loaded it, and it looks like it's displayed it just fine. And we can spell this one wrong as well. So I'm just gonna, maybe I take out the S right here. And we should see that similar error that we saw earlier. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so this is kind of that same style that we had if you followed my previous series on the beginner's guide to Lua and Love2D. Like I said, I want to move this into this game object, which is going to be another module. So I need these two and this over there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just copy this. It's the easiest thing, so I don't have to rewrite it all. And I'm going to go to the other file. I'm going to paste it in. Now, I don't want to be calling this love. What I want to do is I want to create a function, and I'm going to put the colon here, and it's not love, sorry, it's game. So basically, I'm defining this function, but this function is being defined in the game table. So when I put a colon here instead of a dot, that means I have access to the self. So now down here, I don't need to say game dot, I can say self. If I were to put dot up here, I would need to pass in self as a variable to be able to use it here. But since I've used the colon, it just does it automatically for me. Any other stuff I put here, if I put size or something like that, I could use that somewhere else. But the self is implicitly brought in when the colon is being used. This is kind of basic Lua stuff. I'm hoping you already have a little bit of idea about Lua, but basically in Lua you have this one data structure, which is a table. You can put functions inside of it. That would be methods. If you use the colon thing, you get access to self, and you can put data in it. So this is, like I said, going to be an object, just a singleton object. So this is doing that. This doesn't need to be here at all. And I'm going to do the same thing for this. Instead of calling love, it's going to be making it a method inside of the game table for draw. And then I can use this. I'm going to use the same love thing, but over here at game, I'm going to change this again to self. And I have this little comment to myself because I'm going to be putting other stuff in here, but the comment's a double minus sign. And it just says load game graphics. That's just what I put for myself as a comment. I'm just following my notes. Now, I have this table here and it's local, so it's not accessible outside of this module, outside of this game.lua file, okay, because it's local. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to return it. So if I require this from somewhere else, what I'm going to get is I'm going to get this game being returned. And that game is going to include it's going to be the table. And since these functions are inside this table, these two, the load and draw, are both inside this table, I'm going to have all of that. That's all just going to be returned. So in main, if I go up here and I remove this top line and I will require the game module. So if I say local, I'm going to hold it in a game variable again. So local game equals, and I'm going to require in the module. And the module is called game.lua. It's a lowercase g. So I'm going to use require. And I'll use double quotations, and I'll just call it game. And this game right here refers to the physical name of the file. So it's called game.lua with the lowercase g here. That is what's going up here. So it's requiring that, and what happens is that's returning that game table, and I'm capturing it in this variable. So now it's available here. Okay, so I don't need to do this stuff here. I mean, this will still work now because it says game image, right? And I have game right here. So it still kind of works. Maybe it's going to be a bit weird, but I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it, since game already has a load method on it, I'm going to tell it to run that load method. So there's a load. Okay, so when I type game:load, remember game is passing its own name into this. Okay, the name of this is being passed in. So it'd be game, that's being passed in if I were to do it this way. And on the other side, it'll be, it's going to be implicitly called self. So I'm just going to put the colon here, and I don't need to pass its own name inside. Okay, so when I go over here, it's going to call this, and this is what's going to be loaded. Okay? So down here, I can do the same thing. It would be game:draw. I'm basically saying, hey, game, load yourself. And then I'm saying, hey, game, draw yourself. And game knows how to load its own stuff, and it knows how to draw its own stuff. And for this one, I'm not actually updating anything, so this is still blank. There's no game update yet happening. Okay, so basically we have this local table, and I gave it the capital G again because I'm treating it kind of like I would with the classes, although this is not a class. This is just a singleton object. But we have two methods here. One is load, and it's just mirroring what the love.load would do. But I can make it more complicated, and I can do other stuff, and I don't have to have one long file. And this is going to be the main thing that controls the game, but I will have two other classes later on. We'll have a flake class and a player class. So game.load is loading anything into memory that needs to be loaded, and game.draw is going to draw anything. We will also have a game:update that will update the game state as well. So that's our singleton object, and this is our main file. And I'm going to add one more thing, because right now, every time I run this game, well, let's run it and see that it still works. So let's just make sure it's still working. Okay, it's still working. Now, when I close it, I want to press escape to close it because I'm used to that. That's what I do in my games. But I actually need to tell it to close, which would be Super Shift C for me in Exponent. So I want to add in a key event that can actually pick up if I press the escape key to close Love. So let's go back to the website. And in keyboard, if I click on Love keyboard, and then I go to love.keypressed, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm looking in right now. So in here, this basically has a setup for how to get key presses and then process them. So this setup right here is exactly what I'm looking for, although I'm going to keep it simpler. I don't need the scan code and is repeated. I'm just going to use key. It would actually complain if I left those in because it would say they were unused. So this is almost like I used the letter K instead of key. You can change the name of this, obviously. In my code, I use the letter K, but I'm just going to grab this exactly because this is exactly what I want to do. I want to press escape and I want to quit. So it's nice that they already have that set up for me. So I'm going to put this in main. And I'm going to remove, whoops. See, it's complaining about I have unused arguments. I'm going to remove those unused arguments that we don't need to have them. Okay, so now we have basically key is a placeholder for whatever key we press. This function is looking for any key that's been pressed. When anytime a key has been pressed, this variable key is going to be that key. And then we can say, hey, was that key the escape key? If it is, let's quit Love, which is exactly what I want to do. I want to quit Love. Let's try that. And the formatter, you could see, kind of fixed up the formatting for me. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to press the escape key, and that's perfect. I'm going to open it again, and I'm going to close it the other way with Super Shift C, and it still works. Okay. That's about it. Let's run down what we have. This was just setting things up. So we have the config file that I know these are defaults already, but I just like to have them here. We got the T window, and this is the variable T coming into this. We have window width, we have window height to 600, we have title being set to Don't Eat the Yellow Snow, and we have the icon set to the image of the yellow snow. It's a snowflake image is what it is, but it's yellow. So that's just config, and in the main, we are just basically requiring game, and we're using the internal loads to load game's load, or tell game to draw itself. And we are also checking the key presses here. There'll be a couple of them here, but not too many. The movement will be handled differently. These are kind of, the key was just pressed one time events, not continuously pressed events. That'll be a different setup. Everything is basically being handed off to the game module, and the game module right now is pretty simple. It's just creating an empty table, adding a method to that table that is loading an image, and it's saving it. So this self right here, this means this image is actually in here. So this would be the same thing if I were to do something like this. Yeah, these are kind of similar. This self dot, the self is game. So if this is the variable in game, this is creating a variable in game. We have this empty table, and we're adding this method to it, which is loading the background image. And then we are adding another method to it to draw, and we're drawing that same image. And those are just being hooked up from the main.lua. Okay, so that's going to be about it for this one. I just wanted to set it up. So this was all just setting up the basic game structure. The next video will be creating the player, loading the player, creating the player class, and moving the player around. So that's going to be it for this one, and thanks for watching, and hope you have a good day.